I'm sure you've heard the term toxic masculinity. If you subscribe to a model of masculinity that says it is a sign of weakness to seek help, that leads to all sorts of unhealthy outcomes.
Most dads don't disengage because they don't care. They disengage because no one ever showed them how to stay engaged, especially under pressure. In today's episode, Ed and I sit down with Christopher Brown, president of the National Fatherhood Initiative, to talk about what actually helps fathers show up consistently and confidently. In this conversation, you'll walk away with three things. First, what the research really tells us about why dads disengage and what re-engages them. Second, the most common mistakes organizations and systems make when trying to support fathers and how to avoid them. And third, what effective fatherhood support looks like in practice, not theory, and why it matters for kids, families, and communities. Chris brings decades of experience working directly with fathers, practitioners, and policymakers, and this conversation goes well beyond surface-level advice. Chris is also a new author and will soon be releasing his book entitled The 24/7 Dad, 12 Habits of Confident Fathers, which brings decades of research and frontline experience into a practical, grounded framework for dads who want to lead their families well. What I appreciated most about this conversation is that it doesn't shame dads or lower the bar. It recognizes that most fathers want to do better. They just don't want to do it alone. Whether you're a dad, a professional working with fathers, or someone who cares deeply about family well-being, this is an episode you'll want to stay with. Let's get into it. Well, welcome, Chris. We're so excited to have you. And for those listening, we have Christopher Brown, the president of the National Fatherhood Initiative, in today's conversation. And so I'm really excited as we think about and plan for a fresh start in the 2026 and helping dads make some changes and transitions and become the fathers that we know they want to be. So, Chris, I feel like you're going to have a great amount of wisdom and insight to share with us. So really looking forward to it. Can you just start out by giving a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and then we'll get into our first question, which will be more about your journey into
Sure.
fatherhood.
Well, thank you, first of all, Drew and Ed, for inviting me on Dad Central. I've admired Dad Central for many years as a leading organization in Canada around the promotion of involved fatherhood. It's a very important work that you guys are doing. And we really consider you guys to be partners in a way, along with, fatherhood leaders in other countries who are doing similar work. So I am a president of National Fatherhood Initiative, based in the U.S., and I've been president of the organization since 2013, but joined the organization in 2000. So I've been with the organization for most of its history. We were founded in 1994. And since joining National Fatherhood Initiative, I've been the person who's been primarily responsible for the creation of the evidence-based and evidence-informed programs and other resources that we use to help human service organizations throughout the country more effectively engage fathers in their programs and services, which then help the fathers become more engaged in the lives of their children. On a personal level, I'm a dad. I have two grown girls, 30 and 27. And I'm a fairly new grandfather. I've got a 19-month-old granddaughter and hopefully soon another grandbaby on the way. So I'm enjoying a new part of my personal fatherhood journey. And I live just outside of Austin, Texas. Kind of consider myself a native Texan, although I was born in upstate New York. But as a song by the famous musical artist Lyle Lovett goes, I got to Texas as fast as I could. So at any rate, with that, that's a little bit about me.
No, that's great, Chris. Sounded like a true Texan there with that last line. Personally, I just want to say thank you for those kind words. I've looked from afar and admired the work that NFI has done since I even started this journey, probably back like in 2016, 2017. And so to hear you say something so kind about Dead Central is, well, it just warms my heart and I really appreciate it. Um, but I'd love to dig into just briefly your journey into fatherhood. Obviously you've been doing this work, but as a dad yourself and now as a new grandfather, what was, I guess, your journey into fatherhood like? And
Mhm.
maybe upon reflection, maybe what's the one piece of advice or piece of, if I hadn't known back then, you would tell yourself maybe as you're about to become a new dad.
Yeah, well, I think, I sort of liken my journey into fatherhood as jumping into a body of water without any sense of how deep it was. I
Mm,
was clueless about how to be a good father, in part because I didn't have a good role model growing up. My own father was physically present in my life until I was a senior in high school when my parents eventually got divorced. My parents had a very difficult marriage. He was completely disengaged emotionally and spiritually from my life and the life of my younger brother. And so we really didn't have much of a relationship growing up. And he really chose, because he didn't have to, he chose to not be in the house very much. He worked all the time when he actually didn't have to. So my parents eventually divorced when I was in high school, and my father and I were estranged for many years. We were able to reconcile to an extent years later before I actually became a father, but I just had no roadmap, if you will, for being a good dad. So, and that was sort of my personal experience. And from a professional level, I'm an anthropologist. And so, one of the things that I became acutely aware of when I was in graduate school was the growing body of evidence that was showing that dads were really important to the well being of children, despite the general sense at the time among Americans that dads were sort of nice to have, but not necessary. In that, if father wasn't in the home, that's not that big a deal. Anyone could kind of step in and fulfill the fathering role. And yet, the research was showing that that's not the case. And so, I started to realize that you know. I, if I wanted to apply anthropology, and I was studying in a field called applied anthropology, to use anthropology as a way to solve a social issue or a social problem that I really cared about, that I could kind of marry my personal passion for, helping dads to avoid uh, raising children who would experience what I experienced as a child, and do this on a professional level. So I started studying this literature. I realized that I could apply my anthropology training to address this issue. And as luck would have it, I came to learn about National Fatherhood Initiative, which was formed right at the tail end of my graduate school studies. And I eventually joined the organization, and the rest is history, so to speak.
mm. That's a cool story. I'm kind of interested, maybe to pick at it a little bit. Ed, do you wanna hop in and ask a question, or do you want me to just
Go
move
ahead.
on?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think the question that I want to ask, especially around this idea of not having the father figure that you hope to have, I always think of that experience as very painful, and there's varying degrees of pain, maybe. And so I'm wondering, what maybe have you learned, or what has the research shown, or what has your professional capacity taught you that's helped you navigate the pain that's often associated with not having the father figure or the relationship with your father that you hoped you'd have.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, that pain of not having a father in your life is what we call the father wound in the fatherhood arena. And my predecessor at NFI, his name was Roland Warren, and a great mentor of mine, used this image of a hole in my soul in the shape of my dad. So a hole in the soul in the shape of my dad, and that really resonated with people that we were working with, the organizations that we serve. And, I've used it, I've kind of stolen it shamelessly over the years to, just really kind of share what it's like for children who grow up without a present involved father in their life. There's just this hole that they're constantly looking to fill. And so, from the perspective of healing that pain, I learned early on through some training that I received early in my professional career to really look at painful experiences as an opportunity to grow. And so for me, what was really important, and it was a huge development in my life in terms of healing that father wound, was to start working with other men who had experienced their own father wound and to come together as men to work through that pain so that we could help support one another in our healing. So, in graduate school, in addition to discovering the literature about the importance of a father's involvement in children's lives, I started to interact with other men who had that father wound, and we came together and formed a support group and worked together through over a number of years to help each other heal. And there were a number of other resources that we used as well. But at the time, there wasn't a National Fatherhood Initiative. There wasn't a group available in our community at the time. I went to graduate school in Tampa, attended the University of South Florida, and there just wasn't anything available at the time. So to kind of speed up the story, I ended up coming to Texas and initially working with the state health department in Texas, focused on helping different programs across the department that were focused on public health to better understand how do you engage men and fathers in this work. And I started to do some work locally around fatherhood and starting some support groups. So, in addition to the personal work that I did with the support group in Tampa, when I got to Texas and started my professional career at the state health department, I ended up volunteering in the community to start some support groups for fathers here in the Austin, Texas area. So I used both that personal support group experience and then kind of took that experience and sort of paid it forward, if you will, to help other fathers who needed to heal their father wound.
Hmm. That's great. That's a great story as well, and a lot of insights as part of that. So thank you, Chris.
Mhm.
Ed, over to you, my guy.
Yeah, so we're kicking off a new year, and many fathers will say, or dads will say, this year will be different. And from your decades of work with the NFI, what do you see as the top barriers that hold fathers back from truly making a fresh start? And what are the habits of those who successfully reset?
Sure. Well, I think it's difficult for me to say, unequivocally that there is one or two things that all fathers should do because, frankly, each father's experience is a bit unique. So let me just start off there. But I do think there are some principles and some habits that all fathers can use that can help them to kind of customize how they decide to restart and become the kind of involved fathers that they want to be, and most importantly, that their children and families need them to be. So the first, I think, is to start a regular reflection practice. So just like in any part of your life where you're seeking to make change, I think that being able to step back and reflect on where you are presently in regard to that change, so in this case, becoming the best father that you can be, is a really important first step in raising your self awareness about how you got to this place in the first place. So, you may be a father like me who had a terrible relationship with his own father, lacked a role model. So maybe one of the things that you want to do is you want to seek out a father who's a great dad to learn from and who can mentor you in becoming a better father. You may be you may have had a great role model growing up, but somehow you lost your way. And so maybe if your father is still present in your life, you can turn to your father and ask him for advice and guidance. So I think that reflection step is really critical. First step to take in being able to reset at the start of the year.
Mm.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah, I really enjoy that insight there, and it's really helpful to hear that because one, as a practice for myself, I'm definitely incorporating more of that often, and then of course too, when I think about some of the work that we're doing in our dad mentor program, that really maps onto that as well in terms of that idea of reflect. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, let me
Chris,
add
you've got.
one.
Oh, go ahead.
May I add one other thing?
Yes, please.
I think in stepping back and reflecting on where you are presently, I think it's helpful to ask other people who care about and love you, whether that be your own parents, your wife, or your partner, or even your children if they're old enough, how they see you as a father, because so often we're blind to some of the things that we do or we don't do, because there are things that fathers can do that are not effective in terms of being the best father that they can be. But there's also things that they're omitting, things that they're not doing. So asking others in your life to help you reflect and kind of level set where you are presently is very important.
Yeah, love that too. That's so important. Uh, Chris, you've got a new book coming out.
I
It's
do.
the I'll make sure I get it right. The 12 Habits of Confident Fathers. Oh, sorry, it's the 24/7 Dad. 12 Habits of Confident Fathers. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah. And so it's coming out this spring. And if you could share with us, of the 12 habits, which one do you believe is the most transformational for dads who want to, redesign this next year for themselves?
Well, that's an interesting question. So let me just give you a little bit of a background on the book, and then I'll answer your question directly. So
Yeah, that's great.
um, this is actually my first book, and it's largely based on the work that we've done over the past really 25 years or so since we started developing fatherhood programs that are evidence-based and evidence-informed that have been used widely across the U.S. And so I've kind of taken a lot of what we've learned over the years, borrowed some things directly from our programs, but also done a lot of new research to identify a system, if you will, that any father can use to customize his involvement in the lives of his children. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we can give people specific tools for them to use, but if they can't modify or customize those tools for their unique situation, they're not going to have as much impact as they would otherwise. So the importance of habits in our lives can't be understated. And if you're not aware of exactly what a habit is, I mean, I think when you say the word habit, of course, people have an image of what a habit is. But basically, the power that habits have in our lives is they allow us to put our behavior on autopilot so that we're not drawing upon a lot of cognitive and sometimes physical energy that's required to move throughout our lives on a day-to-day basis. So that's really where the power of habits come from. But habits have the ability to have a negative impact on our life, as well as they have the ability to have a positive impact on our life. So I learned a long time ago about the power of habits when I took a course when I was at the state health department in Texas called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, based on the book of the same name by the author Stephen Covey. And when I went through that course, I immediately saw the power that habits could have on my ability to be a better father. So when I came to National Fatherhood Initiative, one of the things that I was committed to was building a habit base into all of the programs so that what involved fatherhood looks like is really a series of habits that will help you to be effective as an involved father. So forward, 20, 30 years later, and I was approached by a publisher to write a book about fatherhood. And when I thought about what that book should be, I settled on identifying habits that would be most helpful to most fathers. So the habits that are in this book, the 12 habits, really form a system. So there's not one habit that's necessarily more important than another. And it's not necessarily the fact that you can start with any habit and become more of an effective dad, although you can. You could pick any one of the 12 habits and would definitely improve your ability to be a better father. But the first two habits are working with an accountability partner and reflecting on your fathering actions. So that reflecting piece. Those are really the foundations to becoming a better dad because they're all about self awareness, raising your self awareness about where you are as a father currently, but consistently raising your awareness about where you are as a father as you want to improve your fathering over time. The other habits really build upon those first two and connect to those first two. And they create a self reinforcing system that once you are applying all 12 habits, you're able to basically be an involved father sort of on autopilot. It doesn't mean that you can completely ignore what you're doing as a father. Oh, those habits form a reinforcing system that helps you to be a better dad on an ongoing basis. So I really recommend in the book that people start with the accountability and reflection habits, and then address the other 10 habits from there.
Mm, that's great. I mean, I love the power of accountability for sure, but I see the value of connecting those two, both reflection and accountability. Anyways, Ed, over to you.
Yeah. So this, I guess, also I'd like to say, ask you, get your thoughts on the importance of structure when it comes to fatherhood, because you talked about the accountability, and it seems it's part of a structured framework. Could you provide some insight that in regards to structure and fatherhood?
Exactly. I think, what if there's one thing I've learned in my life, both personally and professionally, is the importance of discipline, self-discipline. And we talk a lot, of course, in the fatherhood field and in our programming about how to effectively discipline your children. But when it comes to self-discipline, that's a very important part of being a good dad because having a system or a structure that you can follow or a framework or whatever you want to call it, I think is very helpful because it's a guide. So, we see this in so many areas of our lives. We have, if we subscribe to a particular religion, we have uh, guidance and structure and ways that we can, create discipline in our lives. If you follow leadership principles, perhaps you have a particular leadership system that you follow. They all provide some kind of structure and guidance. Um, and I think that's very important because, there are lots of temptations that can take us off course as fathers. Things that we could be doing that compete with being involved in our children's lives. This is one of the struggles that some fathers have that we work with through that our partners work with through our programs is fathers come in without an idea about how to be a good father. Some of the fathers have never been involved in their children's lives, and so they have to overcome many of the temptations that take them away or that compete for the time that they should be spending with their children and families. So, yeah, structure is a very important piece of being a more involved father, and that's why in the book, those 12 habits form a kind of framework, if you will, that can help fathers to be very disciplined on a regular basis about their involvement.
Mhm.
Thanks. That's
Yeah.
true.
Well, I'm curious if we could talk briefly about maybe some of the data that you've got access to at
Mhm.
NFI. And so, because you work closely with state agencies and you collect these national insights, like, can you highlight one or two trends or pieces from the data over the last year about father engagement, about challenges fathers face, or even about opportunities that dads should know going into, let's say, the next year, 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we're seeing that's very encouraging, both from a human service organization perspective and the perspective of fathers and how men are starting to see the fatherhood role in their lives. I'll share those
Mhm.
with you. So, one of the things that has been very encouraging for us to see in the States, and I see this in other countries as well, is the growing awareness among human service organizations about the importance of being intentional and proactive in better engaging fathers in their programs and services. So, when I
Mhm.
began work at National Fatherhood Initiative, there was a lack of awareness among organizations about the importance of father involvement. So, in the States and in other countries, what we've seen is the development of a human service infrastructure that's very focused on mothers and children. And that's obviously important. But in doing so, they've often left fathers out of the equation, even though they seek to be what we call whole family centered or to take a whole family approach. So, in pursuing a whole family approach, they've left a very important part of the family out of that equation. And it's challenging to reach fathers because in most cultures, not just in the US, but in other countries, men are raised to not seek help, including for around being the best father that they can be. In fact, when they actively seek help, often it's considered a sign of weakness, that somehow they're not as much of a man if they can't kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps and address their issues on their own. But through the work that we've done and others have done, we've seen an increase in awareness that organizations need to be more truly whole family centric. And as they became more intentional about being more whole family centric, what they were seeking were tools, programs, resources that they could use to be actually proactive and to turn that intention into action in ways that would actually draw fathers in so that they could engage them successfully and build stronger families. Now, one of the things that we know from some national surveys, particularly of millennial fathers and also Gen Z fathers, is that being a father is a much more central part of their identity than it is for men in older generations. What that means is that they see being a dad as a central part of who they are, not just as some role that they may eventually come into. And they're also seeing that role in a more holistic framework. So, one of the things that we focus on heavily at National Fatherhood Initiative, and I do in the book as well, is this notion of holistic fathering, that men are not just financial providers, but we are emotional providers, we are spiritual providers. There are a number of ways that we provide for our families, for our children, that have nothing to do with the size of our pocketbooks. So, with that in mind, what we're seeing is this growing awareness among younger fathers about the importance of being holistically involved. And so they're looking for opportunities to work for companies, for example, that support their fatherhood role. They're looking for opportunities to engage their communities in ways where they can express that holistic fatherhood role. And they're really looking for ways that they can more effectively balance their professional and personal lives. So one of the things that I was actually talking about our staff with our staff about during a weekly all staff call that we have every Monday is what I'm sensing is this there's like this growth in the number of daddy podcasters. We kind of call them daddy podcasters. I mean, Dad Central, what you're doing is a part of that. But we're seeing more and more dads just starting their own podcasts. We're seeing more and more support groups just growing organically in communities across the country, because dads are naturally, they're being driven intrinsically to seek this kind of support. And that's critical, because where the real transformation occurs for most fathers is when they find a support group, or when they find a mentor who can work with them one-on-one, where they are able to realize that, my gosh, I'm not the only person having a challenge in being an involved father. And so once they are able to find that group and support one another, they realize the benefit of male to male, man to man peer support, and how transforming that can be in helping them to be a more involved father. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is the importance of finding that accountability partner, but also eventually finding that larger support network, whether it exists in your community or you decide to start it as you become a more involved father.
Nice. Good stuff. As we move forward here, many dads listening are navigating transitions. They're always happening, not just the beginning of a year. New jobs, new babies, separation, co-parenting, burnout. What's one habit from your new book that can help a dad rebuild confidence in the middle of stress or uncertainty?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, I think one of the habits is modeling healthy masculinity. So one of the things that is really important to work with fathers on, that's different from working with mothers around being the best parent that they can be, which is why our programs focus specifically on fathers, because there are unique things that you need to do with men in order to help them be better parents compared to helping women be better parents. And so the model of masculinity that men carry into their fathering role, their fatherhood journey, has a huge impact on the father that they are and that they can become. So if they subscribe to a model of masculinity that has a lot of unhealthy aspects to it, let me back up just a second and kind of put this into a broader context. I'm sure you've heard the term toxic masculinity. I mean, it's all over the media in the U.S. It's probably in the media in other countries, and it's this notion that somehow masculinity itself is toxic, and that's problematic, because true healthy models of masculinity aren't toxic at all, and yet one of the things that's being portrayed in the media is that being masculine, a man, being a man itself, is somehow toxic. So, with that kind of broader context, one of the things that I talk about in the book, and we talk about at National Fatherhood Initiative, is that a dichotomy between healthy and unhealthy masculinity, because masculinity itself is not toxic. So, for example, if you subscribe to a model of masculinity that says it is a sign of weakness to seek help, that leads to all sorts of unhealthy outcomes. Whereas if you subscribe to a model of masculinity that says, you know what, it's a sign of strength, and it's a sign that you're a very strong man when you're willing to seek help and work with other men to address your issues, then that can lead to all sorts of healthy outcomes. So the habit of modeling healthy masculinity involves learning about the masculinity model you grew up with, how much you continue to subscribe to that model, whether it was unhealthy or healthy, and then developing and further honing a healthy model of masculinity, and then expressing that and showing that to your children. Because both boys and girls need to see the model of what a healthy man looks like. And there are two other habits, for example, that are critical symbols of healthy masculinity, and that is the ability to care for your physical health and care for your mental health. So the first few habits in the book really focus on the father as a person. So one of the things that we do at National Fatherhood Initiative with our programs is we focus on building the man first and the father second, because it's very difficult, if not impossible, to be a good father if you're not a good man first. So this starts with that self-awareness piece that I mentioned earlier. And one of the things that we know is a part of an unhealthy masculine model is this notion that you should somehow ignore your physical and emotional pain. You should bury it. That includes suppressing your emotions and your feelings in order to show that you're a strong man, when in fact, that's just the opposite of what a strong man is. A strong man takes regular care of his physical and his mental health. You spoke of data, Drew, just a minute ago. One of the things that we're seeing now, and this warms my heart, is men are much more willing now to seek help for both their physical and mental health. You've got lots of people coming out and expressing the mental health challenges that they've had. Men and fathers who are expressing this and helping other men and fathers to heal from their own mental health issues that they've had maybe for their entire lives. So modeling healthy masculinity is really a critical habit.
Yeah, I was nodding my head along with you quite a bit as you were sharing in that. And if you were listening, I think Chris has shared some tremendous wisdom right there. So let's, as we move towards the end of this discussion, I'd like to talk about and build on this idea of healing and what I like to call emotional health, right? We'll call it mental health, but I like to say it's really about emotions, because that's what we're talking about. And so one of the themes for us this month with the podcast and at Dad Central is healing. And so, which is often the emotional work that dads often avoid, but truthfully, many of us desperately need. So, in your experience, what does emotional healing look like for fathers, and how does it impact our ability to really be present and be effective? Which, if you look at your previous answer, it does bang on, but I'm going to ask that question anyways.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Drew, because one of the things that we know from research is that when men and women address emotional issues, they do so somewhat differently. So, one of the ways that men heal emotionally is through actions and activities, being physical. So, it may involve physical activity, going out and working in the yard, or it may involve going out and playing a sport. It may involve doing something physical and getting into our bodies so that we establish and reinforce the connection between the physical piece of who we are and the mental piece of who we are. But for men, it's important to give them permission to heal emotionally. For women, there's more of a natural inclination and connection to their emotions, and to being comfortable in working with other women to heal their emotions. So for all human beings, it's important that we seek support and guidance and help from other people. And it kind of comes back to that masculine model that I was talking about earlier, which is we need to teach men and create support systems for men that make it okay and give them the ability and the resources to be able to heal emotionally. Um, and sometimes that has to do with helping men deal with the anger that they may have in their lives. But one of the things that people often assume is that anger is the main issue that many men face, when in fact it's not anger, it's grief. It's the inability and lack of willingness to address losses in our lives. Um, One of the reasons why we see anger in many men is because anger is the mask. It is the defense mechanism that prevents people from getting at the grief that causes that anger. So men grow and as boys and into men, having experienced loss in their life. It might be the loss of a parent, it might be the loss of a number of things. And they've never had the ability, and somebody say, it's okay to grieve those losses. And so they learn that it's not okay to grieve. They don't learn how to grieve effectively. And so this grief and loss builds and builds until they become so angry that people assume that it's anger that's the issue. So, in addition to helping men deal with their anger and learn how to appropriately show their anger, it's really important that we help them get at the cause of that anger, which oftentimes is grief.
Hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that, Chris. And yeah, there could be really that insight that there's something more there. And so rather than having a gut reaction to perceived anger, it's actually getting curious and saying, well, what's going on behind that? And
Mhm.
this idea of permission, I think, is so important. I'm working with one of my coaching clients right now, and he's going through a very difficult circumstance, and he doesn't have access to his child, and it's deeply painful to him, and he I literally gave him permission. Not that it was I needed to, but I said, look, you are experiencing deep pain and loss, and it's okay. And so it's almost like he needed that sense of it's okay to do that, because that unlocked something for him. As soon as he took it away, did the exercise that we talked about, and literally he came back, and it's almost like he had new life. The next coaching session, he talked about
Yeah,
how free he was and the difference and impact it made. And so, you know, dads, if you're listening, well, you know that you have permission to actually feel some of the pain that you've experienced in life. It could be grief, it could be loss, it could be sadness, it could be, helplessness, it could be feeling powerless, like you have no control. Those are deeply painful experiences. And so if you're just listening to the show, and this is resonating with you, you've got permission, because it's healthy and it's good and it's going to help you be the better father and show up in the way that you want to show up, as opposed to carrying this heavy weight that's being locked away inside that you don't have to carry.
yeah, and I think it's also about giving them, helping them understand that you don't have to fear your emotions. That's one
Mm,
of the things that so many boys learn and men learn as they grow is that emotions are something to be feared and not embraced, and so they need that permission as well.
yeah. Well, Chris, I just want to say thank you so much for the honor
You're
of your
welcome.
time, for the wisdom that you're sharing, and of course, just for the work that you have been doing for years and years and years, impacting organizations, impacting fathers, and impacting families. So it's a great honor to have you on our show and to have this conversation, to have you share with us. So personally, I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and again, thank you guys for the work that you're doing.
Before we let you go, Chris, where can they find out more about your wonderful organization?
You can learn more about National Fatherhood Initiative by going to fatherhood.org. Really simple, just fatherhood.org. Again, our focus is really on building the capacity of human service organizations nationwide, but we also have organizations in Canada and many other countries using our resources. So they're available and effective for lots of organizations wherever you happen to be. And you can also learn more about my book, The 24/7 Dad 12 Habits of Confident Fathers, at confidentfathers.com. Another very simple URL, confidentfathers.com. The book will be physically available in June, but it's available now for pre sale at a special pre sale price for individuals, but also for organizations. Organizations can order the book at a significant bulk discount. So if you're serving dads, and you want to provide them with a resource like this, you have the ability to do so at a very reasonable price. And so there's information on about the book, details about the book at confidentfathers.com, as well as how you can order from our publisher, my publisher, at a deep discount.
That's fantastic. Chris, also, I want to say thank you so much for your and your organization's heart work, past, present, and future, that you are and will be doing. So I want to say thank you as always. And to all the audience here, as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll see you soon. Be well and keep the faith.
Take care, everybody.